We're taught that we're the only country that actually matters. And that's why we are raised to pledge allegiance to a flag and not ask too many questions.
Hey, lovely viewer, welcome back to Comfort for Life.
Glad to have you, amazing viewer. It's another educational video. In light of the things that are happening in our society, we are here to interact to make a positive change. For background, I came across this video on my For You page on TikTok, and I came to realize that this lady has been conducting a search on her TikTok page for the last 8 months, and so far she has 100 videos on this specific topic. I won't be sharing all the videos here, but I had picked few videos from here and there, and also stitched some of the reaction that people had on the same. Why did she feel the urge to even conduct this search? You might be wondering, as an American watching this, why is it even important for me to know how the rest of the world views me? Don't you think it's important to know how your country is viewed on a global scale? And also, we're here for promotion of healthy relationship, and this talk is the one that you'll get us there. So it also promotes better cultural exchange, and she felt the urge to do this because as a child that she was indoctrinated that American dream, and when she grew up she realized that it didn't match the reality, and she had a very hard time believing the life that she was living, and she decided to just conduct a search and to know, apart from what I've been taught from school, what else is out there? What else is left to know? What is that I don't know that the rest of the world knows about me? And this changed her perspective in different ways. Before we go further, I'll just let you listen to the few stitches that I put together, and let's interact in the comment section. Enjoy the video.
About 8 months ago, I started a series on here about how the rest of the world views the US. At this point, there's well over 100 videos. And the things that I've learned, I could have never predicted. These are things I never learned, even in an AP history class. Because in schools here in the US, we don't really learn how the rest of the world thinks of us. What's important for us to learn is that we're the best. We're taught that we're the only country that actually matters. And that's why we are raised to pledge allegiance to a flag and not ask too many questions. Growing up, I never once questioned that I lived in the greatest country in the world. It took me the better part of my adult life to figure this out, and I'm on a mission to help other people figure that out too, other Americans who were raised the same way I was. And for those of you who have not left your country or not even left your state, it's time to travel, or it's time to get to know people who live in other countries and have some things to teach us. My entire series on how the world views the US highlights the concept of how all of us were raised to believe we live in the greatest nation in the world. We were taught, or perhaps indoctrinated, that everyone around the globe just wanted to move here so badly, and that America is the promised land. Now, many of us today know that this simply isn't true, that there aren't people around the world necessarily desperate to come here the way that we thought that they did. And not only do they not necessarily want to come here or even visit here, even if they were continually paid to do so, they would turn it down. So answer me this question, please. Why are there still so many Americans desperate to believe that we are the absolute greatest in the world, in spite of people all around the world telling us that we are so backwards? Most nations do not have this superiority complex like we do. You'd think that we might just take a lesson in humility from other countries who learn what doesn't work and implement new ways of being. But instead, us Americans, we double down on what doesn't work. Make it make sense.
So I'm an American living in Australia, and I have been here for the past 6 years. And I feel like it is my American duty to tell other Americans this message. So if you are from the United States, please listen. If you're not from the United States, I'm sure you will love this video just as much. Back me up, baby. But we need to spread the word, okay? You guys have no idea how the rest of the world views us, all right? We are not the top dog. We are seen as loud, and obnoxious. Seriously, quiet down. You're at a level 10, I'm gonna need you to be a level 4, all right? We don't need to express all of our thoughts out loud when you're in a restaurant. You don't need to tell everyone how you're feeling, what you're doing, your whole life story. Don't need it. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the world believes that we have never looked at a map in our life. For some of you, I know that is true. So pick one up. Also, we're seeing some pretty crazy ass people. You know how everyone in the US thinks everyone from Florida is crazy? Like we say, oh, of course it's in Florida. Oh, they must be from Florida. Well, the whole world thinks America is crazy. The United States of America, sorry. The whole world thinks the USA is crazy. And they'll go, yep, that's an American. Oh, they must be from the US. And do not get me started on guns or the presidents or anything political. But just know, everyone thinks we're going backwards. And we are. But everyone can see it and nobody is vibing with it. Another thing, I beg you, I beg you, I beg you. Please learn sarcasm. Please. Please just have a bit of humor. Watch Ricky Gervais, right? He makes a lot of jokes about us. And they're pretty accurate and they're really funny, but just learn to laugh with it. It's called banter, okay? Just learn to laugh, yeah? Another thing is that people can tell by the way that we dress if we're American or not. It's very obvious. Apparently we don't have good style. Also, if you travel outside the US, you cannot pay with US dollars. I've been hearing stories about this from people and I've been seeing this stuff on TikTok that people are going to other countries and thinking they can pay with US dollars. What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on, we can do better. So for now, what I need you guys to do is I need you guys to pick up a book, a map, watch YouTube, maybe find some international TikTokers outside the US. Just please get educated on the rest of the world. The whole world is not the USA, is not the United States of America, right? There's so much more out there and it is so beautiful. And I know not everyone is able to travel and experience the things I've experienced. And I'm very lucky for that. But if you're watching this video, it likely means you have the internet, which means you have access to get educated. So please do. For the sake of American living abroad, for the sake of the rest of the world, please do.
I can imagine that for anyone not living in the US, it must be both amusing and terrifying at the same time. If this were a movie, if this were fiction, the things that are happening to us are incredibly hard to believe. I know, especially from people in other countries who live in a much more civilized way. And I know many people around the world are afraid for us. They look at the way we do things in this country. They look at our antiquated bullshit laws and oppressive ways that we have to live and can't imagine doing it. They can't imagine why we agree to this. The reality is, many of us are horrified by how we have to live. And we do have to live this way because it's not easy to just get up and move to another country. A lot of people have made that suggestion on my videos. Do you know what it takes to uproot your life and move? It's amazing when people are able to do that, but keep in mind there's a lot involved in moving. Because you're right, the things I want are completely normal, realistic wants. Having bodily autonomy should not be a privilege. Not everyone is willing to admit how much we still live in a patriarchal society. Women in this country are often voting against their own rights. One of my biggest takeaways from making the series of how the world sees the US is how many women around the world have full bodily autonomy, have full safety. Like, it's not a privilege to be able to leave your house at night and actually feel safe. It's just the standard. And lastly, there are people who feel safe and comfortable sending their children to school because they don't live in a country where there is a real threat of school shooters, where there's a real threat of something horrible happening to their child. Yes, you absolutely nailed it with this comment. Women do basically get punished for getting raped. So not only do they have to live through the unbelievable, unfathomable trauma of going through that assault, but what happens or what potentially happens after the fact can be equally or even more traumatic. So here's a situation that is completely unwanted, and on top of that, the woman gets pregnant. And then she's faced with a decision of what to do next. However, in the US, oftentimes that decision is stripped from her. So not only was her dignity stripped during that traumatic event, but what happens next, or potentially what happens for years to come, she'll have to deal with as well. And yeah, so that's what it's like to be an American woman.
As I have studied in the United States, I have studied in Dominican Republic, and I've studied in France, and I was having this conversation over on Instagram, and I was like, I wonder if other people truly realize, especially if they haven't traveled, how the rest of the world sees us as Americans. As someone who has studied in basically 3 different countries, I realized that the main difference in the education system here in the United States versus, Dominican Republic and France, because those are the 3 countries that I can really speak on, is that we here in the United States have a very individualistic point of view, and it's also very, we don't really talk about other countries as much. Like, my cousin sent me today a video of my godson in school, and he's 3 years old. Okay, so he's in kindergarten, and he was learning about India. I didn't really get to know anything about truly India related, or their culture, or what they did, their music, their food, until I met Indian friends in high school. So I find it very interesting that here in America, we pride ourselves in having great educational systems, but when other countries look at our educational system, such as Europe, they legit think we are dumb. To them, we are probably one of the dumbest countries in the world, which to me was very shocking because I come from the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic, or a lot of us, do see the US as top tier, the best education. And the issue is not necessarily with access to education in the US, is quality of education in the US. I'm forever grateful for this country because it did give me access to be able to study for my undergrad and my master's. That may be due to the conditions that I lived in Dominican Republic, or that I grew in. I wouldn't have been able to have access to this types of opportunities where I could travel to France. But I will say that it was extremely shocking for me to know that one side of the world, or smaller countries such as Dominican Republic, can see this country as top tier, and other countries such as France, England, Sweden, Switzerland look at us and they're like, you guys are dummies. It's insane to me. And I went into looking at videos of just what other people think about Americans, specifically Europeans, and the word that I kept hearing in a lot of those videos was school shootings, fat, low quality food, freedom, Captain Morgan. And it's just kind of eye-opening. I've also had experiences with people that I have worked with who have come from out of the country for the first time to the US, and their first thought is, I don't feel safe driving. I live in Florida. I don't feel safe driving because I don't know if a cop is going to pull me over and shoot me, even though they are not, colored or dark-skinned individuals, which is the cases that we see more here in the US. I had an intern staying with me from France, and she had rented a car, and she said, I'm not even honking the horn at anybody because I don't know if someone's gonna be pissed off and then come on my window and shoot me. She's like, I don't want those problems. So for those of us who have not left America, and for those of us who have left or gone to other countries, I think it's really important to have conversations with people just on how they view us as a nation, versus just going to take really cute pictures and make it aesthetic and just say that we've been to a place. I believe that traveling is a lot more than just going there and eating and enjoying and taking a picture. You truly want to understand how these people live. And that is why I enjoy traveling so much, and why I love talking to people, and why all of my kids, whenever I do have them, will be able to have an experience abroad, like studying abroad.
Even though I was living in the US, I am living in the US, watching TV and just seeing the American dream play out in front of me was so incredibly appealing. It helped to create so much of what I thought my life would be. Yes, I had other influences as well, but TV was such a big one. So I'm curious, for those who grew up watching American television but not living in the US, what has been your experience, watching that while growing up and then becoming an adult? What is your opinion? What do you see as the differences portrayed in TV versus what you know now? Because for me, learning that so much of what I watched is just a complete facade has been incredibly eye-opening for me. I've learned some incredibly eye-opening and often shocking pieces of information, things I never learned in school, not in any history class. And one of the things this series taught me was the importance of being quiet and listening to other people. Now, I'm a therapist. I do know that fundamentally, but things that I've held as an American as fundamental beliefs have been dismantled. And that is in large part by recognizing that I don't know everything, that what I have been taught may not be true. With everything going on in the world right now, I think it's incredibly important to remind ourselves how listening can be the most important thing we can do. That if we're constantly putting our own words and our own voice out there, how else are we supposed to actually hear people? The world sees the US. And not all of us are looking to leave the US. Not all of us are looking to give up what we have here, but we do acknowledge that there are significant issues. One of my favorite things about this platform is the ability for people to interact with others from all over the world. I know that for many in the US, traveling is not an option. Being exposed to people outside the US is not really an option. So coming on here and hearing stories and interacting with people who have different experiences from their own is really important. It has been eye-opening for me personally, and I'm 41 years old. So imagine what it's like for people in their teens and young adults who are hearing stories and hearing about how, they're sending their kids to school with no fear of any kind of mass shooting, with no fear of walking down the street at night. Many of the things that we deal with here in the US are US specific. The US. Many of us grew up basically being told exactly how we're supposed to think and feel about the US. Every single morning, most of us in school said the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And if you're anything like me, when you started to travel a lot more as an adult, you got to see how other people around the world live, and you got to see how different it is from in the US. You also got to see how people viewed their own country. You may have experienced people feeling a level of appreciation, but maybe not obsession the way that many of us do in the US. And this can be incredibly eye-opening. So I'm curious to know, when did you realize that this country is not what you were told that it was when you were young? Or when did you stop believing that the US was the greatest nation in the world?
As you watch this, what is running into your mind? I'll call you to conduct further research on this. Don't settle for this few-minute video. You can conduct your own research and know more about this. But she didn't just raise problems, but she also suggested some of the practical ways that things can be done better. Some of the suggestions, I'll let you listen to them in the next clip right here. But also, what do you think can be done? Your thoughts matters. Tell us.
I'm wondering how many Americans have been watching my series about how the world views the US and wondering, how can we do better? I have a suggestion. It's something I have personally had to come to terms with, and I suggest you do as well, particularly if you're American. Decolonize your mind, and here's how. The first step is admitting there's a problem. Most of us have been taught everything we know from a white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal viewpoint. And if you're feeling confronted by that, that's how you know it's true. This is particularly the case for anyone above the age of 30 who lives in the US. And if you live in the South, that probably applies to any age. How amazing is it that we have this platform that you can listen to people and learn and start to deconstruct what you've been taught your entire life and actually learn real history.
Kindly give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the bell. Goodbye for now. I appreciate that you spent your precious time with me.